Hello guys, it's John here doing the final part of my Reimagining Beyblade Burst series. So this time we're covering DB/BU, and yeah, so this is actually the video that inspired the whole series. I wanted to make this video months ago, then I got the idea of maybe talking about some sparking stuff, then I had some other ideas, so I just decided, I'll make it into a whole series, but this is the video right here that I basically wanted to do from the beginning, and the one that I have by far the most to talk about here, so there's going to be a lot to get through. Yeah, so I guess I'm not going to take any more time. We're just going to get into this because I think this is going to be a very long video, so let's get into everything. So let's start this off with a very simple change. Dynamite Belial. I don't think Dynamite Belial is that bad. However, I'm taking it apart to swap out the armor too. For 3. I personally think 3 just made way more sense for Dynamite Belial. I just think, it's a Tri-Wing Bay. I kinda don't get why they didn't just start this thing as a Tri-Wing Bay, especially when, Divine Belial eventually had 3. I feel like this would have just made far more sense from the start to just give this thing a 3 from the start. That's all I had to do. Also, this has kind of a bonus effect, because the next bait to actually get the 2 armor was Guilty Longinus. Guilty Longinus would now pretty much be the original bait to come with 2, which I think would work a lot better. I think it pairs better. It also just makes Guilty feel a little bit more unique, in my opinion, so has a little bit of a benefit there. But, yeah, this just makes so much more sense overall to me. That's really all there is to this change, honestly. Also, just for the sake of consistency, yes, I will be making this change to Dangerous Belial as well, giving it the 3 armor. I know that this one gets swapped off, immediately, and yeah, I know you can swap off Dynamite's 2 armor for L gear, but with Dangerous, it gets swapped off even faster since the gears were already out by this time this thing, actually released, but I still think it should have just gone with 3 anyway, again, just for the sake of consistency, really. Next up, we have Prominence Phoenix. Prominence Phoenix was honestly, I think, kind of a disappointment. Phoenix was iconic for Chosets, and I don't think this bay really stands out that much, especially when you have DB and BU together. While I'm fine with some of the part choices, I think that there could have been a couple improvements here. First up, on the actual Prominence blade, I think that there should have been very small amounts of metal, maybe just on some of these outer points. Not a lot, just something to make it a little bit heavier. I know the blade's already pretty heavy, but still I think it would have been nice for the actual shield piece. But also, this piece needed to come off much more horizontally, because when it comes off now, it's very vertical, which actually kind of makes it fly out of the stadium way too easily. I mean, how many times do you see a Prominence battle where it just comes off and is nowhere to be found? This wasn't as big of an issue with Revive and Dead, and I think that that should have been replicated here, making it come off, again, much more horizontally. Also, the driver, Metal Universe, I don't like personally. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically make an alternate atomic type of driver. We're going to call it Traction. Traction is going to be a POM free spinning ball, again, similar to something like Atomic, but it will also have a rubber ring that kind of goes above it. Again, kind of like how Atomic had that ring, the free spinning ring, except it would be a bit larger and also just made out of rubber and also just stationary. So kind of mimicking friction mixed with Atomic effectively. Hopefully this would make it more effective with its shield gimmick and also just give it a general better driver, because I don't think Metal Universe really made a ton of sense. I mean, it's not the worst driver they could have chosen for Phoenix, but they definitely could have done better here. So just giving it some quality of life changes plus a better driver choice, I think would help this thing out massively. Next up, we have Savior Perseus. You can debate whether or not this is even a stock combo, but personally, I'm going to count it anyway. I mean, it was the first Perseus release with a full combo, so yeah, anyway. I actually really like the combo, and more importantly, I also really liked the color choice here. But I don't think this should have had Bearing Dash, because unfortunately, well, it could have worked on Perseus, but the problem is then Savior has too much recoil, but if you want Bearing Dash on a Savior to kind of have like a stationary attacker with good stamina, Perseus doesn't really work for that. This combo just doesn't work. It bursts every 5 seconds. So we're going to swap out Bearing Dash for Extreme Dash. I'd personally make this white and with kind of this yellow-orange rubber, which would look really cool, I think. But anyway, I just think that putting Extreme Dash on this thing would have done great. Because now you have Extreme Dash with Savior, and Perseus, okay, Perseus has decent enough teeth, but with a proper dash driver that's like an actual dash driver, not Bearing Dash, they work fine in my opinion. You have Savior, which is a good attack type. To me, this is just a much more sensible bay. Also, kind of an extra bonus here is that this would give us Extreme Dash in a set. We were kind of lacking on Extreme Dash releases outside of random boosters, so this would be a really welcome addition, I think. While also just giving us a generally great combo. I mean, would be a really good stock combo just out of the box, I think. Not perfect, but still good, so I really would like this to be a proper attack type. I think it would have just worked much, much better overall. Okay, can we all just agree that Greatest Raphael stock combo was a massive disappointment? What was this? What was this? I don't understand what happened here. I kind of can understand the idea of Greatest Raphael thematically being kind of this powerful bay, and I can see why they'd almost want to give it a more competitive combo. That honestly makes sense to me, because of kind of, you know, the kind of just how Rashad was in the show. I can see it, so I kind of get why they picked over High Extend plus Dash, but this combo just doesn't work. And also, there's another problem with this driver choice that I'm going to explain later in the video. We'll get to that. But for now, yeah, I don't like this. I actually think over is perfectly fine as kind of a very round disc for something like Greatest Raphael, but as a driver, this doesn't work for me. So what do you choose? Honestly, you could do a lot here, but I'm actually going to choose a pre-existing driver, Bearing Dash. Yeah, so I'm going to swap Bearing Dash off of Savior Perseus and give it to Greatest Raphael. Also, the lair I think should have just been dual spin. I think that would have been really cool. Maybe make the metal stoppers in here a bit bigger as well to compensate for the worst burst resistance, but yeah. This should have been a stamina type as well. We did not have a single stamina type villain, while we technically had every other type. Longinus was attack, Spriggan's balance, and then, well, I guess Raphael was also balance, but then, of course, you know, Phoenix, Genesis, Lucifer, all defense types. So then this would go with a stamina type villain, and also just another LR bay that's, well, not a balance type. I think it would have been really cool, honestly. And with something like Greatest Raphael being actually pretty good for opposite spin, giving it dual spin, also throwing on over, and Bearing Dash, I think it kind of works with that idea of this being a, not only like an ultimate bay in the show, but also just a genuinely strong competitive combo. Not perfect, but still, I think it would have been a really cool bay to see and just kind of market it that way as well. And again, giving us a stamina type as the villain and just another stamina type in general, just as a prominent bay, would have been really, really nice. So hopefully this would make a bit more sense overall. It's definitely a little bit weird, and I can see people wanting to actually just have more new parts, but this is just my own idea for a improved Greatest Raphael. Next up we have Gatling Dragon. This has to be one of the most boring bays that was released. And yes, we are into BU now. I honestly didn't have a ton of complaints from DB, but I have a lot for BU. So, anyway. Gatling Dragon, again, it was boring. But I feel like with the layer, there isn't a whole lot you can really do here that makes sense. So I get why the layer is the way it is, and, well, Charge Metal Dash, I guess, is fine. I don't think they're going back to something like Ignition. And I understand that, so I get using the driver, but could we at least... We couldn't have gotten like an actual disc for this thing. They really put karma on this. Like, that was honestly just a really bad choice. So we're actually going to come up with a brand new disc called Load. Load would kind of mimic Sting a little bit. It'd be kind of a four-sided disc with that similar shape. Although it would be full metal, no plastic or anything, no Sting gimmick, but still. And the main thing is, not only that it would, kind of mimic one of the older drivers of Dragon, but it'd have more weight. It'd be about 31, 32 grams, maybe, opposed to Karma, which is very light for a DB disc. And this would make the combo even heavier, playing it further into, the whole thing about Dragon being heavy. I mean, it was already the heaviest stock combo, but now even heavier, just because why not, honestly? I mean, technically, stock Belial with either its perfect or ultimate gear forms are heavier. Well, I guess kind of. I guess Dynamite with perfect gear might not be, but Dangerous and Divine are, so yeah, anyway. It would just be something to make this feel a little bit less boring. And again, I understand Dragon not being crazy, but this would just be something to make it actually feel like a better release, and again, plays more into the weight idea. This is just something to make it, again, decent. Because I feel like they kind of made Dragon a little bit weirdly with Imperial, like they kind of went a little far there with what they were doing, so I don't expect that, but this would have been a step in the right direction. Alright, now we have Xiphoid Xcalibur. Can we agree that this wasn't the best Excalibur design overall? I don't know, I really don't like it. So first up, I'd reorient the core to be vertical. And I would keep the whole sword idea where it kind of pops out. But I try to do it in a way where it can kind of pair with the armor tab here. And maybe there'd be two metal pieces that come out on the side that kind of make up the edges of the sword, which, again, the sword could be made up by part of the one armor. I think that would have been kind of cool, honestly. So anyway, with that said, there's not really a whole lot else for the layer outside of maybe making this part of Xiphoid metal, just a little bit of metal there. The layer, yeah, it just looks bad. I just wanted kind of a redesign of it, and that's basically it. The only other thing I want to change is the driver. Sword Dash, listen, I understand why they did Sword Dash, but it still sucks. So we're just gonna not do that. And what we're gonna do instead is we're actually going to do Iron Dash. Feel like Iron Dash would have been kind of nice to see if I can get this thing to go in. There we go. And well, yeah, this is just Iron from Siege. You just pretend it's a Dash driver. But yeah, I think Iron Dash would have been a sensible choice, and it would have just been nice to honestly get Iron Dash like at any point in Burst, so this would be a good chance for it. And yeah, just kind of a better looking, kind of retooled layer, just slightly, to make it look better. And then also, again, just the different driver, because Sword Dash just really sucked. It made sense thematically, but it was just bad enough for me to not want it to be there at all. Okay, Zest Achilles. This one, just gonna do that, do this. Okay, high extend plus dash. This is what I meant by a issue I would talk about later. Putting high extend plus dash on Raphael, I feel like forced Achilles to not use it. They could have used Dimension again, but that'd honestly be boring. But yeah, if they didn't put that on Raphael, maybe we could have gotten it here instead. I think this would have made much more sense. And also, again, later in the video I'll get to another bay that would benefit from this whole pipeline, so high XN plus dash, I think, should have been an Achilles driver. It just makes the most sense. Outside of that, I think that Achilles never should have been LR. I don't think that was a good idea, so we're going to go ahead and remove the actual LR function here. Although it would be kind of cool if we got kind of a shield burst stopper. Remember Chosi Achilles, kind of how those pieces would come out to sort of act as a shield? Well, what if we kind of got something from the core here that when like hard launched, you'd have kind of pieces that would come out and maybe retract as it would go, as the battle went on, but basically they could act as burst stoppers to, you know, stop the disc from moving. That could have been kind of cool to see. And outside of that though, Zest, I would have made a little bit of a thicker blade, not LR either. Could have made it a more full blade, a little bit thicker, just better, you know, so it's actually functional without one of its like sub blades. But I would have stuck with the two different sub blades, but I would have made them more dynamic. So first up, we would kind of have the Zest sword instead of just being this plastic piece. I would have made it have a little bit of metal inside. This would also kind of be a reference to the frame I made for Chosi Achilles, Yearn, that had metal inside on a frame. This would kind of be a similar piece, sort of, but would also have metal inside, so you'd have that. But we now would have a new subblade, the Zest Shield. This would basically kind of be made to make the contact points a bit more subdued, which obviously is kind of what the Infinite Shield, you know, did, so I'd be replicating that here, but would also have rubber on the outside, yeah. I put rubber on the Zest Shield. There you go. There's two subblades that are more dynamic, a more functional version of Zest, a new core gimmick to replace LR, and it gets to use a driver that actually makes sense for it, although this would be more red, not this color, but I think that's kind of obvious, so yeah. There you go, Zest Achilles remodeled to be actually Achilles and not Spriggan for some reason. I don't know what happened there, honestly. Now we get to Wind Knight. I actually really like Wind Knight and its Wind Blade gimmick. It's not the most effective, but I honestly just appreciated that they did something like this, honestly. That wasn't a gimmick that they've done like 50 times before. It was just nice to see. They also gave it a BU lock disc, which is really cool, honestly. But there's a couple problems with this. First up, the armor. I don't get why they did the 6 armor on this thing. In my opinion, it just didn't make sense. Like 3 was right here. This pairs so much better with something like Wind, in my opinion. I just don't get why they didn't opt to use it, but I mean, whatever, I guess. But since I am reimagining Burst, we get to use the 3 armor, so that's nice. Also, bounce is awful. It is the second of 2 times that I want to basically get rid of a new driver for an old driver, because, yeah, bounce is just awful. And we're going to give it Eternal, but Eternal Dash. They never did Eternal Dash, but I feel like it wouldn't have really been that big of a deal if they did, so we're going to do that here. Again, just pretend to dash driver, but yeah, there you go. That's a better Wind Knight combo, in my opinion. Using 3 and Eternal Dash. Just pairs better, and it makes sure this thing in stock actually has stamina, because bounce was a mistake. There you go. Better Wind Knight, that's all there is to it. Alright, these next 2 I'm doing as a pair. I'm sure it gives it away, but Super Hyperion MR and King Helios MR. These were bays that existed, and they had the Eclipse gimmick, which was pretty cool, but there were some missteps here. First up, the gold part of Hyperion's core and the silver part of Helios' core. These should have been metal. Hyperion 2 and Helios 2 from Sparking had metal. I don't know why they didn't do that here. Even if not this whole area, they could have at least maybe done it like these like diamond-shaped areas or something on the core. That would have been nice. Just some metal would have been nice, honestly. Would have made these cores much cooler. Also the discs. So the discs are Interesting. I think Tapered was a massive mistake for Hyperion, so we're going to give it Load. The driver, or not driver, the disc I gave to Dragon. As far as Helios goes, we're going to give it Illegal. I just think Illegal makes sense for it, honestly. Also with the discs, this kind of is a sparking reference a little bit. It was actually kind of unintentional, but it just kind of worked out this way. But, Dragon and Hyperion both shared one attack. Now they're sharing Load, and then Helios and Achilles shared one balance. Now they're both sharing Illegal. Again, kind of coincidental, but I just thought it was a cool little idea and, I guess, Easter egg. And also the drivers, make them dash drivers. Explosion never should have been released as Explosion. We should have had Explosion Dash, and I don't think Zeal is quite crazy enough to really be a problem if we make it Zeal Dash just a match with Hyperion, so I think that's fine. And there you go. We're basically just, again, doing quality of life changes, better disc choices, making the cores more dynamic, and just giving them upgrades to their drivers. I don't think these two needed a whole lot to be overly interesting, but I think this helps out a lot. Next up, we have the BU version of Ultimate Valkyrie. This seems pretty nice overall, and I do like the layer a lot, but I do have some problems with this thing. First up, I think they could have given a little bit of an upgrade to the Valkyrie 2 core, giving it 3 sets of BU locks to match with Spriggan 2. This isn't that big of a deal. They did upgrade Belial 2 with Divine Belial to give it the set of BU locks, so I don't think this would have been too crazy, especially for Valkyrie of all things, so yeah, that's all for the layer though. The disc and driver were abysmal. Well, Wing Dash is okay, but could have been better, but Excel Dash is a joke. I don't get why in the VS that they decided to go back to the original drivers. Why not show new drivers that kind of just show how far the base have come, rather than going back to the start? I don't like that idea, personally. It's just nostalgia bait. Anyway, as far as the disc goes, we're going to come up with a new disc. It's going to be called Flight. Flight is a BU lock disc, because we kind of need more of those, and it's sort of modeled after Zenith, but with kind of 2 attack wings. Basically, yeah, just the rubber wings from 2 attack placed onto something similar to Zenith. Give some extra attack to help out Ultimate, which would be pretty nice, honestly, and should just be a cool BU lock disc, sort of with a gimmick with the rubber, which is nice. As far as the driver goes, it's going to be called Ultimate Reboot. Not Ultimate Reboot, okay, I'm just going to leave that in, that's actually kind of funny. No, not Ultimate Reboot. Perfect Reboot. So, yeah, we of course had Reboot, then Ultimate Reboot, which was, of course, Reboot but with rubber, but now we're going to have Perfect Reboot. I feel like Reboot kind of got outclassed, well, both of them. Especially because, they just didn't have enough attack power. So with Perfect Reboot, it's going to be a little bit different. It'll actually be a bit larger, so there's a bit more rubber rubber and plastic for the surface area overall. The plastic piece that comes out at the start of the battle, a little bit larger. Then once it, goes in, the rubber area is, again, a bit larger. Should just have more attack. But the rubber will also have kind of those variable/evolution rubber spikes. So the rubber area isn't as big, but as it gets worn down over time, it'll have a much larger surface area. So we're giving just kind of a general upgrade to something like Ultimate Reboot, but we're adding in the kind of variable gimmick. While I'm not the biggest fan of the variable gimmick personally, thematically it just makes sense, and I think having a reboot of all things, a mode-changing driver, which Valkyrie got a couple times, and then also giving it kind of its main driver gimmick that it's most known for, in one driver, I mean, come on, that would have been perfect. So that's kind of my idea for a better Ultimate Valkyrie that, again, get a B-Lock disc, that'd be really cool, and also just a really nice driver, honestly. It would have just been really cool to see something like that. Alright, now we have Burst Spriggan. So, like Valkyrie, I do have some problems with this one, mainly the disc and driver. The layer is actually completely fine here, so I'll leave that the same, but the disc. I don't like this disc. Spread Dash, it's like okay, but again, should have been a B-Lock disc. So we're going to give it a disc called Crown. Crown's going to kind of be modeled after Zero Wall. So it'll have the translucent black plastic on the outside with kind of that wall shape, and the inner part could kind of have a Zero-like pattern to it. However, there will be a gimmick to it, kind of like I did with, Zenith and 2 Attack being put into one for Ultimate Valkyrie's new disc, Flight. So again, we're going to mix stuff here. We're going to mix Zero Wall to balance. While it looks like Zero Wall, I'm going to give it the free spin gimmick of 2 balance, which I honestly think would be really cool to have a B-Lock disc with free spin like that. So there you go. Crown is a B-Lock disc with free spin. I feel like that kind of completes Spriggan's gimmicks, and I think that's what they should have done, and that would have been really nice to see. As far as the driver goes, do I need to say more? Do I really need... We already had the perfect Spriggan driver with Quattro. I know this is just Quattro. This would be Quattro Dash, which, again, we did get on Achilles, but like I mentioned earlier, kind of the whole pipeline idea. If we take away, High Extend plus Dash from Raphael, give it to Achilles. That takes away Quattro Dash from Achilles, we could put it on Spriggan. So I would keep this color of the original Quattro, it'd just be a Dash version though, so again, just keep that in mind. But, there we go, this would be a more proper looking Spriggan, although the disc isn't quite right, but whatever. Quattro should have always been on Burst Spriggan, I don't know why it wasn't. Well, I kind of know why they did Quattro Dash already on Achilles, but that never should have been the case. Put Quattro Dash here, give us a better disc, and Burst Spriggan would have been leagues better than any other Spriggan, but instead it was just kind of a close call, and I think it's debatable to whether it's even the best Spriggan or not. I personally think it is, but it's close. But again, with these improvements, I think this is just by far the best Spriggan, no doubt. Alright, now we have Barricade Lucifer, the final release. This was just so much missed potential. While I'm fine with them using 10 for the armor, and I think Barricade was really cool, the Lucifer core was abysmal. They did nothing outside of B-Locks. Take some notes from Lucifer too. Put some metal at least on this circle part right here. Just give it a little bit of metal on the core. And then do rubber underneath, again. Lucifer 2 had metal under here. They should have, or not metal, but rubber. Had rubber under here. Kind of do something like they did with Kirbyus and Bahamut. But just the middle part of the rubber, not the outside. So it just would kind of be a supportive piece. Maybe make the teeth a bit worse to compensate, but still, I think that would have been more than fair. As far as other parts go, I think for a disc, Fortress always made so much sense for Lucifer. I'm surprised they chose Illegal, so we're going to swap it out for Fortress, because again, I just think it makes way more sense to the Lucifer disc. And while I don't hate Bearing Mobius as the final driver, can we all just agree it should have been Bearing Drift? Bearing Drift was so much better. It feels like a more ultimate defense driver. Bearing Mobius is cool, but just not quite there. Maybe put Bearing Mobius in the set with Hyperion and Helios instead of Bearing Drift, and then save that for Lucifer. I think this would make way more sense. Yeah, this is just a much cooler Lucifer, I think. Maybe make this magenta or something to match with the rubber, or just keep it gray like Lucifer had, but either way, this just makes so much more sense as a final Lucifer. And again, of course, with the added metal and rubber on the core as well. So there you go, that is every improvement I want to make to the DB and BU bays, personally. And with that, we now are going to get into the original bays. I have 10 of them. I made 10 original bays for this video. So this video is not even close to being over because I have to explain all of those. Again, yeah, let's just get into this, I guess. Alright, so my first original bay would be Wretched Deathscyther Karma Eradicate -7. So the actual core would be very similar to the Deathscyther chip from Sparking, except the top part would actually have a little bit of metal up here, and yes, it'd be a vertical core as well. There'd also be the Wretched Blade. Wretched would have a very large metal scythe, and it'd be able to move slightly, opposed to Hollow, which can't move at all. It'd just kind of move a little bit back, and it'd kind of expose this contact point even further. Also, the metal would kind of match up with the metal on the core, which I think would kind of be really cool. So, yeah. Anyway, that's really all for the main part of the layer, I guess, except for 7 being the armor. And then also Karma as the disc. Both of these just seem like the most jagged Deathscyther-like parts, and I feel like they would have been on a DB Deathscyther, so personally I don't think there was any need to make anything new here. I think these work perfectly fine. As far as the driver goes, Eradicate Dash. So, what is this driver? It's a proper right rubber flat. I know Explosion was kind of meant to be a right rubber flat, but I feel like that was still a little bit weird. This would be a proper soft rubber, right rubber flat with no extra gimmicks to it. So this bay would have been absolutely wild, be very fast and unstable. And honestly, that just works perfect for a Deathscyther. That's kind of what I was going for, just a fast bay. Also kind of has a pattern, like a jaggy-like pattern, which almost calls back to kind of the older drivers that, Deathscyther used to have, which I think works nicely. Yeah, this just seems like a good DB Deathscyther, and I really wish we would have got it. It would have made so much sense for us to get a DB Deathscyther, but unfortunately, I guess placing it third in the election just wasn't good enough, even though so many bays under it got evolutions, but it didn't for some reason. Still upset about that, but anyway, there you go. Wretched Deathscyther. The next bay is Typhoon Wyvern Tapered Nuclear 6. So as far as the core goes, it'd actually be much different than this Wyvern chip here. I don't like what they did here. It's kind of like the one Wyvern here, one here. It's like a really small thing. It'd just be one much larger Wyvern to make the actual motif much more apparent. It's harder to describe these types of things for design without any reference, so I guess we'll just go into the gimmicks. The actual Wyvern core would kind of be an inverse Lucifer in a sense, where you'd have the 2 rubber tabs on the outside from something like Perseus and Bahamut, but without the center part. So yeah, just have better burst resistance basically. As far as the Typhoon blade goes, the entire outer part, kind of like this, would be free spin, with some rubber, again kind of referencing Jet, but it'd be much thicker blade, and also there's no ratchet gimmick going on. It's entirely just free spin, which I think would have been much nicer, and I wish they would have done that if they did a Wyvern in DV. And as far as the armor goes, we have 6. This just always struck me as a Wyvern type of armor. And then Tapered reminds me of Armed and Vertical, just with the shape, so we're going with Tapered. And now we have the driver, Nuclear. So this is actually modeled after a trackball. Yeah, I, no joke, did research on trackballs for over an hour just for this driver idea. So basically, this would be a phenolic, I don't know the pronunciation, phenolic resin coated ball. So kind of a type of plastic that's meant to be very smooth and is what trackballs use. And you have a little bit of metal inside with a ball bearing inside the driver, well, like inside the ball. And a free spinning ring on the outside to kind of hold it in place, but still give it the trackball kind of movement, kind of on a smaller scale. So it might not be as crazy as an actual trackball, but it'd still kind of be the same material and idea as one with its movement. I don't actually know how this driver would work at all, and it's definitely one of the more experimental ideas that I have, potentially the most experimental idea. But it would just be really cool to see a trackball driver. It's kind of a trackball version of Atomic. It would be absolutely wild to see something like this, and then of course the layer is just meant to be, in my opinion, a proper DB Wyvern evolution with the parts to kind of match that. So there's my DB Wyvern idea with Typhoon Wyvern. The next bay is Bolt Zeus Illegal Comet 4. So as far as a Zeus core goes, I kind of mentioned it before, but there'd be kind of a face modeled after this. Obviously a much more detailed face, but still. And then there'd be a lot of lightning kind of above it as well. The actual gimmick of the core would be metal balls. There'd be two metal balls, kind of one on the top, one on the bottom. It'd effectively mimic a Zillion Zeus type of gimmick. Since cores, I feel like, are almost getting to a dual layer size. Not quite, obviously, but if you take like the furthest point on each side, it's not that far off. So yeah, basically just a Zillion Zeus type of idea. Then, for the actual bolt blade, there would be 8 metal balls just all evenly distributed kind of around in an octagon type of shape. They wouldn't be kind of curved like flare, it's just kind of straight in and out. Of course, we have the forearmor. I just feel like this works well, personally. And then also the illegal disc. It just kind of reminds me a little bit of Infinity, slightly. So we're going with it. I just think it works nicely for a stamina type. And then there's the driver, Comet. Comet would have a free spinning metal ball, kind of that it spins on, and then there'd be the rest of the driver. So it'd almost have a drift-like shape with a large plastic piece above the metal ball. And in here, there would be 8 metal balls. They'd kind of work similarly to Bolt, where they have small slots where they kind of go in and out. And yeah, there would just be a ton of metal balls in this driver. And just on this whole bay in general, of course, you have 18 of them. Technically 19, with the one on the bottom of the driver. Yeah, you have 8 in the driver, 8 on the blade, and then the 2 on the core. So, there you go. 19 metal balls, technically. This just feels like a good ending point for Zeus. Just going stupid with the gimmick, and just giving a pretty solid combo all around. Alright, now we have the meme bay itself. Magma Ifrit Obsidian High Wave Dash 2. So I think everyone knows what Magma Ifrit looks like. I don't have it because I don't buy Hasbro bays, because why would I? But yeah, the core and blade would be modeled after that, just Takuratomi version of it. Anyway, so the Ifrit core would just have strong locks with no gimmicks. And the Magma blade, I'd honestly give just a little bit of metal underneath. It wouldn't really be visible. Just something to help it out a little bit, just to make it feel a little better. It's not perfect, but it'd at least just be something. So, yeah. As far as the armor goes, I'd honestly opt for 2. I just think it is the closest to whatever they gave it on the Hasbro version. Then we have the disc. The disc, which I think in the Hasbro version is called like Sequex or something. It's not a real word, so basically this would be a Takuratomi version of that. Same shape and everything, just a little bit bigger and heavier. But with a new name, Obsidian. I mean, Magma has to do with volcanoes, Obsidian also does. I just went with a kind of theme there, so yeah. Anyway, as far as the driver goes, I would give it High Wave Dash. I don't actually have High Wave Dash, but here's Wave, I guess. Also included with it, I think that they should just throw in, like, Jaggy Dash to kind of compensate for the low mode, and then High Wave Dash kind of for the high mode, with how, you know, the quad drive drivers work. I think that just makes sense right there. So yeah, it's basically just a Takuratomi version of Magma Ifrit. There isn't much else to it. I just think it'd be nice to get this release. Alright, now we have Hex Satan Roll Universe Dash 3. As far as Satan goes, I'd probably, again, kind of like Wyvern, instead of having like this two-sided thing, I'd just make one a larger motif. I wouldn't really include any gimmicks on this, except like 2 BU locks. I think that'd be fine. Then there's the Hex Blade. So this would be interesting. So they actually go back to kind of a Christ Satan shape with kind of the 3-sided thing instead of the 5-sided. But The wheels, well, there'd be 6 wheels. They'd actually be grouped in, there'd be 3 groups with 2 wheels per group, basically. That's what I'm trying to get at. The wheels would be much larger and also rubber and would have proper bearings in them, so they'd spin a lot better. And again, they just take up more of the blade, which I think would be a good thing. Also, I would use a 3 armor, because I just think, it'd be 3-sided. It makes sense. Then we have the roll disc. This is a BU lock disc. There'd be 12 plastic wheels on this thing. It'd just basically be surrounded with wheels, the whole disc, which would be kind of cool to see, honestly. And the driver, it kind of just looks like this, except it's a dash version, Universe Dash. So there you go. Kind of a more interesting Satan. Again, trying to do a little bit more with the wheels to hopefully make it a bit more effective. I don't know how effective it would be, but hopefully it's something. And the disc, it'd just be kind of funny to see a disc full of wheels. And again, it's kind of like a Zeus thing. Just go wild with the gimmicks for the end of Burst. I wish they would have done that. So there you go, a DB version of Zeus. Not Zeus. I got my mind mixed up on Zeus. A DB version of Satan. There we go. Our next bay is Regulate Chronos Tick Extend Plus -6. In case you're wondering why I'm even doing Chronos, it's mainly just because it was part of the election and I didn't want to leave any out. Anyway, so first up we have the actual Chronos core, which I'd kind of make a more expanded version of this with kind of a face and all of the gears. Outside of that, the only real gimmick I'd give it is 2 sets of U-locks. I don't think it really warrants anything else. The Regulate Blade would be something that kind of works similarly to Alter Chronos, having kind of 2 small pieces of metal inside. And, well, I guess that technically wasn't the case here, but still, sort of the weight shift idea and stuff. Anyway. Basically, you'd have 1 stationary metal piece, and then 1 piece that kind of moves around. Again, like how this would on Alter Chronos. So yeah, just kind of an expanded version of that, where you could have the metal on opposite sides to make it balanced, or pair them together to make it unbalanced. Outside of that, I would also just give it the 6 armor, because I feel like it kind of just fits, honestly. As far as the disc goes, it would be a completely new disc called Tick. This would be a BU lock disc, but unlike the other BU lock discs that I've mentioned in this video, this one would not have a gimmick. It's more like the earlier ones, like, well, I guess like the ones we actually got, not early ones, but Xanthus and Moon, where it's just plastic. This one would just have black plastic to kind of mimic the shape of Meteor, its frame. So, yeah, anyway. Outside of that, I would also just give it Extend plus Dash, just to have a non-high version. So yeah, this isn't a Dash version, but still just kind of a normal Extend plus. Yeah, anyway. So I think that just works better. I don't think Trends really works by the point of DB. This just seems like a sensible choice. So it's not the most interesting, but it just kind of plays further into its gimmick and kind of just gives it a nice, improved version for the final season of Burst. The next bay is Spectral Hades Flip High Zephyr -6. So Hades as a core, I think you can kind of imagine the design would be similar to this. So there's that. I would also give it 2 sets of BU locks and also give it some metal on the center of the core like we have here. Then we get to the blade, Spectral. Spectral would just be kind of similar to this, where it just has a ton of metal. And just kind of a similar shape even, but yeah, just a lot of metal. Not as much as this does, like, obviously we'd be sizing this up so I wouldn't have it coated metal, because then it'd be too heavy. But there'd still be a lot of metal on it. I'd give it the 6 armor as well, just because I feel like with kind of these parts here, 6 just works with it. So we're using 6 again. Then we get to the flip disc. So flip would kind of be turn-like in shape, but would have kind of this axis where you'd be able to rotate the plastic part vertically to flip it. So that's how it would flip over and kind of change modes, again, akin to turn. So yeah, you'd have just kind of this axis, like, on the metal, and then the plastic on the outside, you just, like, quite literally, it just be held in place, and you just flip it. So you have to take it apart to do that, but still, I don't know if that demonstration made any sense, but hopefully it does. Also, the driver, I mean, High Zephyr Dash. This is Zephyr Dash. We got High Zephyr at one point. There was never a High Zephyr Dash. This would be a good time for it. And also, I just think, yeah, it works for Hades. And again, this is just kind of a Hades that would be more so adapting this Hades into DB rather than going crazy with, you know, new stuff. But I think that's kind of fair. This would be definitely an oddball pick, and I'd mainly just be making it because I think it'd be really cool to have every villain. And also, Phoenix is in DB. It'd be kind of cool to have Phoenix and Hades in DB, which is why I wanted to make a DB version of Hades. And yeah, I think Spectral Hades would do a pretty good job with that. And also, I think that the name Spectral Hades is just also really cool. Our next bay is Monarch Diabolos Split Jacket -5. So, Diabolos was done dirty in sparking. I, of course, tried to fix that last video, but now let's evolve even further past that. So first up, the Diabolos core would kind of mimic these a little bit. They'd be horizontal, and yeah, kind of a similar design. You also would have metal in the center there, plus a set of BU locks. Monarch would kind of mimic Abyss, and like I mentioned last time, it would mainly be red with some gold, and the left side would be, well, would have some white, the right side would have some black. And yes, Monarch is flippable, and each of the 5 blades would have a bit of metal inside, just to make it a little bit heavier and make it a bit more competitive. And then we, of course, get to Split. So this would have some metal distributed on the outside of the disc. And it's a BU lock disc, so the plastic would have some metal integrated into it. And a lot of the actual metal would be on the outside this time, which would make it a little bit more interesting. So, I mean, that'd be pretty cool, I think. And, of course, it would kind of have a detachment gimmick. Now, normally it would not detach from the disc, but that's where we get to the new driver, Jacket Dash. And yes, I'm just making this a dash driver from the start, but anyway. Jacket would kind of mimic bullets in some ways. This piece would actually just be a full-on, like, metal rod, though, which I think would be nice and would definitely reduce any potential for breakage. And then there'd be kind of an outer piece like this that's made up of mostly plastic, but with a little bit of metal that attaches. Again, it's just kind of a better bullet. However, when used with the split disc, it would connect. There'd be a specific connection between the two. And then the split, well, part of the split disc would come off with a lot of the metal. And you'd be left with kind of two, well, one bay that's just kind of light, and then kind of a shell of a bay that's pretty light as well. But again, it's 2 bays. This is definitely a little bit harder to get to work than with sparking, because I feel like the double chassis was a bit easier. But with this, it'd be weird, but I still think it would work pretty well, and you'd get a really cool bay out of it. I'd also probably try to model Split to kind of have 5 blades to mimic Monarch. And so it would pair pretty nicely overall, but again, it's split off, and I just think that'd be really cool to see. And again, I think this would work. It has to be a pretty thick disc as well, so it'd be a very heavy disc. But again, the main gimmick is for it to split off. Although it couldn't be too heavy either, because you don't want it to accidentally be broken if you're not using it with this specific gimmick. So it's a bit of a balancing act, but I still think it'd work. And again, you just end up with 2 lighter bays. But again, you still do get 2 bays, and that'd be really cool. Also, I do want to clarify right now, for any potential rulings, if this were to exist, you'd only have to have 1 part to win. So basically, if the main bay even got like knocked out of the stadium or just stopped spinning, even if just sort of that shell piece is in there, and wins, then you win. You just need one of the two pieces, and that's kind of what balances out having two light bays, is that you just need one of the two to win. I really wish we would have gotten Diabolos, and I really wish they would have given it justice, so here is my idea to give us a really cool final Diabolos. Oh yeah, and I almost just forgot to mention, the armor. It would be the 5 armor. This would kind of just have 5 points, again, kind of mirroring the blades here from Monarch, which I guess I'm just using Abyss as like the sample, but still. I guess Abyss is not 5-bladed, but still. The blades would just kind of be similarly designed to this, and yes, the 5 armor would just kind of pair up with that nicely, and that's really all there is to it. Almost forgot to mention, but yeah, this is where the 5 armor comes in, so if you never got a 5 armor for whatever reason, I'm putting on Diabolos. Anyway, yeah, sorry about almost missing that, but there you go. Our penultimate bay is Supreme Apocalypse Xanthus Ultimate Reboot Dash. So this would definitely be clearly modeled after Prime Apocalypse, but again, just kind of a DB version, although the layer would be fully fused, because I don't think you could really get an infinite lock system to work within the DB system, at least not properly, so here we are. It would definitely look like Prime Apocalypse, just a bit different. You wouldn't need these side pieces to be like this, so I'd probably make these have more distinct gaps. You wouldn't need the metal to be specifically right here. I definitely would distribute the metal more on kind of the sword-like piece. As far as the tabs go, it'd be kind of like integrating the Big Bang armor into the actual design of the bay, which makes the tabs much harder to actually press in. But I'd also make the tabs smaller. These things are just not meant to burst, so the kind of new infinite lock system for DB, yeah, again, it's just not meant to burst. I mean, it can, but still. I'd also give it Xanthus, because I just think that makes the most sense compared to Zero Dagger, and then Ultimate Reboot Dash would just kind of be reused. Maybe change up the colors a bit. But yeah, this would kind of just be more of a bonus bay, likely coming in a set with the next bay we'll get to. Again, just kind of want to get all the villains, and I feel like if we're going to have an infinite lock system, we might as well have Apocalypse. So I'm sure you could tell where I'm going with this, with who is going to be the final bay. Again, Apocalypse is just more of kind of a cool addition, but let's get to the real reasons why I wanted the infinite lock system in DB. And our final bay, not just for this video, but for the series, is going to be Pristine Genesis Geometry. So this would definitely be based on Regalia Genesis for the layer, and again, the layer's fully fused. I should also mention that the fully fused layer would be locked to low mode for both of them, for Apocalypse and Genesis, so yes, it's locked to low mode, Raphael's locked to high mode, so you get both iterations there. Again, this is just sort of like a DB version of Genesis. These parts would be more filled in, it'd be more just like a thick oval layer. Metal would still be distributed kind of on the outside, but just not like this exact way. You'd have 2 tabs still, but they'd be very small. Again, you're not meant to burst these things, and it sort of had the Big Bang armor integrated in. Like I've already mentioned with the infinite lock system, it's just kind of carried over to Genesis, as it should be, of course. Outside of that, we then have Geometry, another disc driver fusion, and yes, it's an electric driver as well. This would kind of be like a giant version of Hybrid, so yes, even larger than this, with even more metal. And since it's a disc driver fusion, yes, it is locked to DB bays effectively, because it needs to be a low-mode disc, so yeah, you are only able to use this on DB bays, which I think is fine. And this would be very heavy, the metal would be very thick, and then also the bottom part is kind of similar to this, I guess, just maybe a bit larger though. So as far as the function goes, the main function would be to pretty much bring this thing on to the outside of the stadium, and then sort of almost like angle itself down a bit, and then just fly into the middle, sort of crash down. And that's kind of what its attack pattern would be, and what it would do. So again, it's a defense type, so it just dodges outward to the edge of the stadium just to slam back in to, you know, kind of take any other bays out that try to get into the middle of the stadium. And I just think that'd be a really cool bay, and this is what I think would be a really great Genesis, especially like as an actual evolution. Again, furthering the infinite lock system and giving it an actual new electric driver, with a new gimmick to it with its attack pattern and stuff. And I think it'd just be really cool to see Genesis back. I really wish they would have done it. And yeah, this is my idea for kind of a revised version of, not only just a revised version, but I guess just the whole evolution to Genesis. And there you go. That is the final bay of this whole series. And that's that. That is my entire Reimagining series. This was definitely the part that took the most effort, but yes, this is my entire Reimagining for DB and BU. Wanted to give a lot of, different parts to certain bays that existed, especially throughout BU, because I felt like BU just, for most bays, at least one part just missed the mark for me. And also making 10 original bays, just because I felt like there were a lot of bays that were missing out. Of course, the 6 legends, the 1 oddball from the election, of course, with, Chronos. Just really finishing off the villains and giving us a couple extra cool surprises with Hades and Apocalypse. And of course, giving us an actual Ifrit. So yeah, there you go. This series was honestly a lot of fun to do. It definitely took some effort because I had to actually write out everything and figure out all of the parts, all of the part names, try to avoid any conflicts, It took a lot of effort. I basically had to look at every single part in Burst and then also come up with new parts. And yeah, this took a long time to make. Again, there's a reason to why I didn't do these frequently and also broke it up into 6 parts. Because there was just so much to do. But yeah, so this was the DB part. Hopefully it was enjoyable. Again, I definitely did the most here, so hopefully that was cool. But yeah. And that's it for the series. So what did you think about this part, or just the series in general? Again, there's a lot of effort. I kind of want to do something like this for Bottle M, but that'll be down the line. Yeah, for now, this was my Reimagining Beyblade Burst series. I just wanted to kind of go through all of Burst to see what I could do to kind of improve bays, at least improve them in my opinion. And yeah, this was never meant to discredit Takaratomi, as I mentioned in my first episode of this. I think Takaratomi did a great job, and I think a lot of things just come down to the business side for Takaratomi. They don't want to go all out on every release, and while I try to avoid doing that here to make it somewhat realistic, I'm sure I took some liberties, especially with things like Diabolos that might have been a little bit too crazy, but still, I just think Diabolos deserve justice, so yeah, anyway. Takaratomi did a great job, but again, I just really wanted to try my hand at designing some things and, again, changing up some things that they did to, again, in my opinion, make them better, and also, yeah, just try my hand at designing my own bays and seeing how those go. It would have been really cool if I could, actually have these drawn out, or, actually have them, modeled or printed out or something, but again, I don't have the budget for that, unfortunately, nor the skills to do it myself, so explaining everything was what I had to resort to, and that's what I did. So yeah, hopefully the series turned out alright. It was honestly fun to make. And yeah, that's basically all to say for this. It was a fun time. That's it for the series. Will I expand on this eventually? I always could go back to this and maybe do some other stuff, but I don't have any plans to right now, but yeah. So that's it for the whole series. I honestly might kind of re-edit some of this stuff and do one giant video, but I don't know. I think I'll just settle on making a playlist for all these, so yeah. But anyway, that's it for this video. So yeah, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.